At the beginning of the movie, Peter, a physician, and Anne, a lawyer specializing in handling cases involving vulnerable women, sleep together in one bed. They have twin daughters, Frida and Fanny. In the kitchen, Peter complains about Anne allowing her clients to stay in their house, implying that she should separate her work life from her personal life. He also mentions that such behavior won't work once his son from his first marriage, Gustav, moves in with them soon. In her office, Anne meets her client, Cecily, and asks her the kinds of sensitive questions that the defense lawyer might ask her in court. When her client becomes concerned about her testimony, she assures her that there's nothing to worry about. That night, before Gustav's arrival, Anne reads Alice in Wonderland to her twin daughters before taking them into bed. Suddenly, curious, Anne questions why their stepbrother hasn't lived with them if he's part of the family. So Anne explains that Gustav lived with his real mom, Rebecca, in Sweden. The next day, Anne is out in the yard working when Peter arrives with Gustav, whom she welcomes with a warm hug. During his first lunch with the family, Gustav receives welcome gifts from the twins, a wooden keychain for his house keys and a drawing. Then Peter offers to buy him things for his new room. While Gustav accepts the offer, he shyly looks down, feeling uncomfortable as he adjusts to the new change in his life. Later, while Anne gets her nails done, she reveals to her beautician sister, Lena, that Gustav was kicked out of school in Sweden. Her mother wants to enroll him in a boarding school now that he's in Denmark with them, but he has to wait until after the summer holidays. She reveals that while Gustav is against this decision, she thinks it's a good opportunity for him and Peter to grow closer. Moments later, when Anne asks about their mother, Lena reveals that she's been hospitalized. However, she immediately frowns when her sister asks her to visit their mom. Sometimes when Anne arrives home, she sees Gustav's wooden heart keychain lying on the ground near the door. To secure it, she puts it in her bag, but forgets to hand it to Gustav, thinking no one has it, and goes to Gustav's room and examines his belongings. Suddenly, Gustav, who just took a shower, enters and startles her. Before leaving her stepson's room, she subtly flirts with him, asking about the book he's reading. The weird interaction perplexes him. That night, Anne gets a visit from Cecily, who's worried that her case won't go well. She comforts her by saying that her testimony can help others like her, but Cecily fears that people won't believe her story. To encourage her client, Anne tells her that if she doesn't testify, her perpetrator will be set free. The following morning, Anne and her daughters arrived home. When she hears Peter and Gustav arguing upstairs, Gustav wants to move out, but Peter won't allow him because he's not old enough to be living on his own. After Gustav storms off, Peter rethinks his decision to let his son live with them, convinced that he should go to boarding school instead. Anne eases her husband's thoughts and explains that getting to know his son will take time, and that he should do his part after not being present for most of his life. After losing their case, Anne runs to the court hallway to chase Cecily, who's upset about how the hearing went. While Anne praises her for doing well in court, the client asserts that she was right because no one believed her, leaving the lawyer to contemplate the case in the parking lot, and confronts her client's assailant angrily, asking him if he feels good about the court's decision. When Anne gets home, she sees that one of their glass windows is shattered and assumes that someone has broken in. To report the burglary, she immediately calls the police and then Peter to inform them of the stolen belongings, which include her bag where she kept Gustav's keychain. Suddenly, Gustav arrives, prompting Anne to inform him of the burglary. She then instructs him to check if he has stolen belongings. The next day, Eric and his boss reprimand her for confronting the defendant in the parking lot. She tries to convince her boss that she did the right thing, but he advises her to behave appropriately next time. While doing laundry, Anne finds Gustav's wooden keychain in his pants, confusing her since it was in her stolen bag. When she figures out that Gustav staged the break-in, she shows him the evidence, but the teenager doesn't say anything. She promises to keep his petty crime a secret from the police if he does his part in the family, which he complies with. The next day, Gustav bonds with his sisters and Lena's son, Lucas, by using a tape recorder to ask them questions. She admiringly observes them from a distance. That night, after stumbling home late, Gustav introduces Amanda as his girlfriend to Anne. He then takes his guest to his bedroom where they can be alone. After hearing the couple being intimate, Anne checks herself out in the mirror, observing her aging body. Days later, Anne watches the children swimming in the lake while she works. When Gustav invites her to swim, she eventually wades into the water and playfully splashes him. When they arrive home, Anne and Gustav are drinking and talking in the living room while the twins are sleeping. After having a conversation about body art, Gustav requests to see Anne's arm. At first, Anne declines, but she ends up allowing Gustav to get a tattoo on her left arm. She appreciates the gesture and smiles. The next morning, Anne and Peter have some guests over on the veranda. While they are busy talking, Anne stands up and plays an upbeat song, which she dances to while drinking. When no one joins her, she eventually goes to the yard where Gustav catches her drinking alone. After inviting her to buy some cigarettes, they end up at a nearby bar to drink. Suddenly, Gustav gets a message from Amanda and prepares to leave. Gustav thanks Anne for the free drink and the conversation. Gustav was surprised when his stepmother gave him an unprompted kiss on the lips. When Anne gets home, Peter, who is worried, confronts her for being late and not informing him where she went. Instead of telling the truth, she lies and claims she went for a walk. This upsets Peter because he believes her behavior is disrespectful to the guests. The following day, after work, Anne heads along to the lake for a swim. Later, while the family plays hide and seek, Gustav joins Anne and hides behind a tree. While Gustav touches her hand for a moment, she seems uncertain about her emotions. That night, Anne decides to show her feelings for her stepson. She suddenly goes to Gustav's room and expresses romantic interest in him, and he goes along with it. They end up spending a pleasurable time with each other. Afterward, she returns to her bedroom. The next day, Anne goes to a tech store. She decides to buy Gustavo a computer. This initially surprises Peter, but he quickly shows his appreciation for her thoughtful gesture. At work, Anne questions her new client Sarah, who was injured in her face because of her frequently drunk father. When Anne mentions that she'll have to inform the authorities about it, Sarah refuses. She claims that her dad didn't do it on purpose and then demands to go home. Anne is happy when she sees Gustav reading Alice in Wonderland to his sisters. The following day, Anne makes love to Gustav in the bathroom while the twins play video games in the living room. Suddenly, Peter arrives early from work, prompting Anne and Gustav to stop what they're doing. Days later, after sleeping together, Gustav asks questions and records the responses using a tape recorder. When asked about the first person she ever made love to, Anne reveals that it was with someone she shouldn't have done it with and doesn't want to talk about it further. Hearing this, Gustav wonders if it was like their current situation, but Anne doesn't answer his question. She gets dressed to pick up the twins. Days later, the family invites guests over to celebrate Frida and Fanny's birthday. As the twins unwrap their presents and touch Peter's arm, making Gustav jealous, Anne leaves to bring water for the twins' new water blasters. Gustav follows her and starts kissing her neck and then her lips. Unfortunately, her sister Lena saw them and leave away, and then follows her inside the house, but Lena is very upset with his sister's inappropriate behavior. She then calls her son Lucas and leaves the party early. Anne is afraid that Lena might reveal her secret, and she tries Gustav to keep away from her in the party. Gustav gets upset and climbs up a tree and falls from it, causing everyone to worry that he's hurt himself, especially Peter. Gustav initially pretends that he can't feel his legs, but then he begins to laugh, revealing that he's playing a practical joke on everyone. Because of this, the disappointed Peter starts looking for other options on how to deal with his son. The following day, Anne talks to Gustav privately in the woods, formally ending everything between them. Before leaving, they promise not to tell anyone about their secrets. Soon after, Peter informs Anne that he's invited Gustav to spend some time with him in their cottage in Sweden so they can get to know each other better. He tells her that Lena called wanting to talk to her, and this makes Anne anxious because the boys are away on vacation. She decided to go see Lena and plead with her not to reveal anything to Peter, but her sister is still avoiding talking to her because of the forbidden relationship with Gustav. Back at home, she attempts to contact Peter, feeling anxious that he might already be aware of her secret. As she's driving to pick up her twins, Anne's phone rings, and in her nervousness, she gets into a small accident. Because of the little accident Anne had while driving, her twins had to come home in a taxi. When they arrived, they saw Peter's car in the driveway, which tells us that he and Gustav have returned from their trip. Later that evening, in the dining room, Peter tells Anne to take a seat because he wants to have a talk. After letting Anne know that Gustav has chosen to attend boarding school, Peter confronts her about their secret relationship, which Gustav has confessed to. However, Anne rejects the accusation and angrily leaves the room. As Peter becomes more confused and starts to believe his son's words over Anne's, Anne begins packing her belongings and insists that Gustav is only fabricating the story because he resents her for being with his dad, who was previously married to Gustav's mother. Afterwards, she tells him that she'll be away for a few days and wants Gustav out of the house when she comes back. When Anne gets back, she goes to Gustav's room where she takes the tapes out of the recorder in case they are used as evidence against her. After that, Peter, Anne, and Gustav sit down together in the living room to discuss and clarify the teenager's accusation. However, Anne, showing no remorse, continues to deny their forbidden relationship, which leaves Gustav in shock and brings tears to his eyes. Peter, who Anne had completely manipulated, asks his son to reconsider living with them if he doesn't change his behavior. Then, Anne stands up and tries to pat Gustav's head, but the angry teenager stands up and spits in her face before going to his room with such disrespectful behavior and asserts that he should be kicked out of the house. The following morning, Gustav packs his things and Peter drives him to boarding school. While later, Sarah pays a visit to Anne at her home and brings her flowers as a token of appreciation for her help. Unaware of Anne's dark secret, the client happily shares that she's now living with a foster family while her dad is receiving treatment. When Anne gets to her office, she's surprised to find Gustav waiting for her. He demands that she admit everything to Peter to convince him that he's not lying. The teenager insists that what she did was against the law, and Anne deep down realizes that he's correct. When Gustav threatens to report her to the authorities unless she confesses to Peter, the calm and confident Anne insists that no one will believe his story because he lacks evidence. She presents him with two choices: either confess to Peter that he's making false accusations or stay silent and walk away. Hearing this, Gustav feels betrayed and trapped in his predicament. In the Christmas night, Anne is working in bed when the angry Gustav suddenly knocks on the front door, calling for Peter. She quickly stands up and prevents her stepson from barging in, insulting him by remarking that he occupies too much of his dad's space. When Gustav tries to kiss her, she pushes him to the ground and walks away, leaving a tearful Gustav in the driveway. At Anne's celebratory party, she goes over to her sister Lena, and she's happy to see her. But even though Lena hasn't spilled the beans on Peter, it's clear that she's still disappointed with what her sister did. While Anne entertains the guests, Peter is outside speaking on the phone with Rebecca, who informs him that Gustav is missing and hasn't been to school since the Christmas holidays. The following day, after walking the dog, Anne returns to their house and sees Frida and Anne playing kickball in the yard. Shortly after entering the house, Peter tells her that he'll head to Stockholm due to the police's orders. Anne insists on accompanying him, but he tells her to just stay with the twins. He also reveals that Rebecca will be joining him there. After her husband leaves, the worried Anne walks towards the glass window and stares into the distance while her reflection faces her. When Peter finally arrives home, he delivers the sad news that a hunter found Gustav's lifeless body in the woods near their cottage in Sweden, theorizing that he froze to death in the winter snow. While they await the autopsy result to confirm if Gustav was intoxicated, the authorities suspect that the teen simply gave up on life and intended to stay there to end everything. After comforting her mourning husband, Anne goes to the bathroom where she finally sobs with regret, realizing what her actions did to her stepson's life. After washing her face, she suddenly sees Gustav's reflection in the mirror, looking at her judgmentally. When Anne tells Peter that what happened to Gustav isn't his fault, her angry husband aggressively covers her mouth with his hand to shush her and pushes her back against the wall, implying that he'll always have his doubts regarding the forbidden relationship. The following day, the whole family dresses up in black and drives in silence on their way to Gustav's burial.